So really quickly, I'm going to pull up this example.
So often in life, our body is doing one thing while the mind is busy someplace else. The body scan exercise essentially helps us to bring body and mind back together again. So when we sit down, we mentally scan downward through the body, starting at the top of the head and finishing at the toes. If it helps, imagine it like the light from a photocopier, moving down through the body at a steady, even pace. As you scan downward, focus your attention on whichever part of the body the light is on. And notice how the different parts of the body feel, what feels comfortable and what feels uncomfortable. It's not about trying to change the feeling or resist any discomfort, but rather building up a picture of how the body feels. And as much as possible, remain objective, interested, curious, coming to it fresh each day without any preconceived ideas of what you might find. With a little practice, this technique can quickly help settle both the body and the mind, increasing our awareness and helping us to feel more present in the world.
That's great. I really like that example. And some of you might already be familiar with Headspace. That's where that example comes from. Go ahead and go back to the presentation. Another source of support when we're feeling stressed is looking to our peers and allowing ourselves to feel supported by our peers to help increase our well-being. And this might even just be, we recognize if we notice someone else looks like they're feeling stressed, paying attention to how they might be having interactions with students. Does it seem like they're overly negative? Do we need to check in with them and say, hey, how's it going? Sometimes it's just a matter of letting someone know that you're seeing them and recognizing that maybe they're having a hard time, and looking for ways to support each other. I know a lot of teachers, we have our professional learning groups, and that's a great place to talk about self-care goals, and it can be a great place to start a goal as a team to work on together. And then you can check in, take 2 minutes to check in at the beginning. How are we doing on our goal? Are we all making sure we're eating our fruits and veggies, whatever it might be. But we gain a lot of support from our colleagues, and having a positive relationship with our colleagues makes our work environment less stressful as well. So knowing that we have people we can talk to, but also just checking in with each other and providing that support. So let's also just talk really quickly about how we can achieve self-care goals, because it's really important that, it's easy to say, oh, I'm just going to start exercising more. And sometimes we might set a goal for ourselves that isn't very realistic, or it's not something that we can actually achieve. And it's important that when we create a goal, that it's something that is achievable, that we can see we are working towards it and kind of monitor that ourselves. So creating like a detailed plan with explicit steps and goals is really helpful. So like an example from an article that I saw recently, let's say you say, I want to eat healthier. That's my goal. I want to eat better. So what are some questions that we can ask ourselves? Like, okay, so that's a really broad goal. Healthy could mean a lot of things. And does that mean all day, or does it mean, which meals are we going to target? Because maybe we want to start small. Like, I'm going to eat a healthy breakfast and take healthy snacks to eat during the day. Maybe it's not every meal, but if we can just kind of focus on some areas that we can change that are small, that's a great place to start that still makes a difference. And just find out, what does healthier mean to you? What kind of food is that you feel nourishes you and provides the nutrients that you need? Or maybe that's, having a plan to exercise with your coworkers before school starts. What time are you going to meet? Those kinds of things. So when we talk about a goal, SMART goals are a great way to kind of start. So, each letter stands for something different when we start to create a goal. And we'll talk a little bit more in detail about that on the next slide, so you can kind of see an example of what that could look like. So this is another resource that we want to include for you to review and maybe take to one of your PLCs or take home and create a goal for yourself or with a colleague at work. So when we think about creating a goal, the first thing we want to do is make sure our goal is very specific. So that goes back to, who is involved, what am I going to do, where is this going to happen, thinking about what healthy food am I going to eat, how often am I going to eat healthy food, is it at home or is it at school, where do those things, so just really specific so that you can keep track of it, which kind of goes into our next goal, is measurable. We want to be able to track our progress to see how are we doing. Otherwise, we might not feel like we're seeing any change. But if we really think about it, gosh, I used to not work out at all, and now I'm working out, 2 days a week before school. That's a big change from 0 to 2. But we need to keep track of that. Like, what things are we going to use to track our progress? And that might just be adding it to a note on your phone. I worked out at 11, on Tuesday, February, whatever, just to keep track of what are the days that I worked out. So that gives you a frequency count of how many times I've worked out. Or for how long. Did you work out for 30 minutes versus an hour, 20 minutes, 40 minutes? It helps you kind of track, how am I doing on my goal, and am I where I want to be, and how far have I come since I started. Achievable, so you want it to be realistic. We want it to be something we can attain. So that's why starting small is really helpful, so that we don't overwhelm ourselves with something that's too big, because we don't want to create more stress when we're trying to increase our well-being. We want it to be something that is attainable. And how can you break it down into things you can do each day? So maybe your first day is your first week, you're going to eat healthy breakfast before you go to work. And then maybe you can up that a little bit over time once it gets easier and more comfortable for you. How do you make it relevant? How will you know what will be different for you if you meet your goal? So like, if something, are you going to be able to tell, I feel better, I'm, working out more frequently, what will change in your life that will tell you that you've met your goal? And why does it matter? Why is it important to you to have this goal? Because I think if we can identify why this is important, then we're more likely to stick with it and to feel like we want to keep working towards it. And then timely. So if you want to have a goal, like, when do you hope to reach it? Like, is it by the end of the month? By the end of next month? Like, just think about, since we're making it a small goal that we can break down into small steps, when can we achieve that first step? Maybe that's a week or 2 down the road. And then once again, how are you going to check your progress? Is that just looking back at your notes to see, like, oh, on these dates I worked out, on your calendar, however you might find is easier for you to track. And it really helps when we enter a stressful situation, to have a predetermined plan for how we're going to respond in a stressful situation. It helps us to make better decisions than we might make when we're already feeling stressed. So if we have a plan that we can refer back to, maybe you keep it in a planner or something that you can quickly pull out and say, okay, what was my healthful strategy goal? What do I need to think about right now? All right, and then scheduling your self-care. This is a calendar that I found as part of an article that was posted by nurses who work in an oncology department. And so this is something they would do to help ensure that people were following through with their self-care, because individuals that work in an oncology department and with their patients, they have a lot of stress, and they're experiencing a lot of stress as a result of that diagnosis. So one way to relieve that is that they scheduled their self-care. So each day had a different thing that they would do. And it was written on the calendar. So, if there's different things that you really want to try, this is another great thing to do with your family or with your coworkers. Like, each day, maybe someone writes a different activity, and you can check in the next day to see, hey, did you do the activity yesterday? It gets it creates some support, but also someone to check in with and say, oh, I didn't do it, and then you can, kind of encourage each other along the way. But it really does help to have something that you are making time for. And this is a way that you can track that. It's like, by the time you get home, okay, I'm going to do 20 minutes of yoga, or I'm going to write in my journal for 10 minutes, and then you can check in with each other.